the Japanese pilots, we talked about propaganda a little bit with like Hitler. Japanese had come up, the emperor had come up with this way to kind of garner support in Japan, and he had commissioned this pilot. I can't remember his name, I didn't include it. But his one goal was just to fly around the attack and take pictures of the attack and document it to send to the people in Japan to kind of garner support for this attack on the U.S. So this is an actual picture of one of the first kind of like bomb runs. And you can see like here are the ships kind of you see just docked. And this is actually a torpedo that has hit the broadside of one of these ships. And you can see like how huge these and devastating these bombs were, as that is like a giant like spewing of water and like metal flying up in the air, as well as we're about to see a close-up picture of these battleships, which are like stories tall. So you can imagine that how large that is from how high up this pilot is, kind of how devastating this air attack is. So the USS Arizona is one of the largest battleships that is sunk. It is hit within 10 minutes after the attack begins, so very early on it's hit multiple times. The problem with this is, and what kills so many of these Americans, is the fact that a bomb crashes through not only the armored deck, but it also hits this magazine with all of their ammunition. So all of the ammunition for all of these guns here, these anti-aircraft guns, is stored, I believe it's back here. And it causes this huge mass explosion on this ship, which leads to over 1,100 American soldiers, Navy men, being killed on this one single ship. So this is a picture of, and you can see like how large this ship is. Like these are very large ships next to it, and you can see just the extent of how incredibly large this ship would have been. So total, they say the final number is 1,177 servicemen died on the ship from the Arizona alone. We're going to watch that video. So the Japanese, this is a success for them. It could have been worse, but still obviously a success. As you only had less than 100 men of the Japanese were killed compared to the over 2,300 servicemen who were killed. You had only 29 planes were lost. And that number is probably higher because of kamikazes. Kamikazes were pilots that purposely would nosedive their bomb or their planes into the ships, into these other buildings. So it's probably less of those were actually shot down. Some of those planes were probably actually purposely crashed. They lost 5 submarines, but as you can see, 188 planes, 18 ships, 8 of them battleships, were destroyed by the U.S. What this does, however, and what is very problematic for Hitler, is the fact that, what do you think, if you were a U.S. citizen at this time, do you think you're still going to be for isolationism? No. So the entire kind of national mentality towards this war completely is flipped around. All of a sudden you have this huge spike in servicemen enlisting for the army. You have this kind of national cry for war. Everyone wants not only revenge on Japan, but revenge on their allies, Italy and Germany. So in a very impassionate speech, FDR calls Congress to declare war on Japan, which they do. So Japan begins their quest for their Pacific Empire, thinking that they've dealt a devastating blow to the U.S. But what this actually does is it, as a famous reporter writes right after this, is it wakes the sleeping giant. The sleeping giant has awakened. So this really puts this high, all these like factories into high gear, this wartime production. And the U.S. joins Great Britain in not only declaring war on Japan, but once Germany and Italy declare war on the U.S., you see just a couple days later, the U.S. in return declares war on Germany and Italy. So just like that, the U.S. is now on the board up here, and we have our match up for what we're going to talk about for the rest of today. So France is still out of the picture, but as we can see, we're now getting a little bit closer to